Hi, this is the Ecosystems knowledge test for year 8, right? So all the facts I'm going to go through, right, you just need to know them all, right? So you need to go through this, fill it in onto the sheet, and then you need to test yourself over and over and over again. Right, describe the process of photosynthesis, including the balanced equation. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to literally do the balanced equation. CO2 plus H2O goes to C6, H12, O6 plus O2. Right, all squished up. So basically photosynthesis is the use of light energy to turn carbon dioxide and water into glucose and oxygen. And the balanced equation bit is you put a 6 there, a 6 there, and a 6 there. And glucose, which is C6H12O6, kind of stays exactly as it is, right? But you have to know that photosynthesis equation. Number 2, what is the role of stomata, waxy layer and palisade? So we've got stomata, waxy layer and mesophyll. Okay, so now if you think about the structure of the leaf that you've got, right, so what you've got is you've got the top layer and you've got the bottom layer, and then there's loads of cells that are in between. The stomata is a hole at the bottom. Alright, so that's the top layer of the leaf there, that's the bottom layer of the leaf, and then there's palisade cells there. Okay, so the job of the stomata is to let CO2 in, oxygen out. Okay, waxy layer, so the waxy layer is this layer right at the very top, right, that's the thicker one. There is also a thinner one on the bottom, and that is to prevent the loss of water. Okay, you would think that a waxy layer is preventing water getting in, which it does to a certain extent, but its main job is to prevent water getting out. The mesophyll is all these kind of cells here, and so what happens is carbon dioxide comes in and it diffuses in between the gaps in the mesophyll to these cells here that have got most of the chloroplasts. Right? So the mesophyll allows CO2 and oxygen to diffuse through the leaf. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to describe the method that you would use to test that photosynthesis is occurring in a leaf. So I'm going to draw a leaf first. Right, there's the stem, there's a kind of line that goes up the middle, and then what you've got is you've got lines going along. Look at this A-level art, no worries. Alright, the stages are, first one is you boil the leaf. Now the idea of boiling the leaf is to kind of try and break down the cell membranes a little bit. Number 2 is put the leaf in ethanol, right? And the main kind of job of that is to take out the chlorophyll, right? And when you actually put the leaf in the ethanol, you put the actual ethanol test tube into the boiling water as well, and then the ethanol boils because it's got a boiling point of 80 degrees. Number 3, wash everything off the leaf, so wash the ethanol off, dry it down, and then number 4, we'll do number 4 in red, okay, add iodine to the leaf. If it goes black, starch is present. And what you'll probably find is that most of the kind of starch is in the middle, right, and in kind of around the actual veins on the leaf itself. Question number 4, describe the process of aerobic respiration, including the balanced equation. Right, now if you think about photosynthesis before, this is just backwards. So C6H12O6 plus 6O2 goes to 6CO2 plus 6H2O. Okay, and remember the balance part of it is 6, 6 and 6. So this is what you are doing probably right now, which is glucose from your food, breathing in oxygen, and you're breathing out carbon dioxide and water, and what happens is you then release energy. Describe the process of anaerobic respiration. Anaerobic means there isn't enough oxygen. So this is then where you've got C6H12O6, so what you're doing is you're breaking down the glucose, and it then becomes C3H6 O3, and there's two of them, that is your lactic acid. Now you do produce some energy, but nowhere near as much and nowhere near as efficiently. And what you then need to do, then you need to breathe in lots of oxygen to clear your oxygen debt to get rid of the lactic acid. Question number 6, describe the process of anaerobic respiration in plants. Right, so what we've got here, we've got C6H12O6, because plants do aerobically or anaerobically respire, right, but they'll tend to do it in very small quantities and particularly at night. And what anaerobic respiration happens in plants, particularly sort of forms of bacteria, right, we then make C2H5OH, and again there's two of them, plus 2 CO2, and that is ethanol. Right, so when you put yeast or whatever it is into like a sugary solution, the yeast feeds on the glucose, and what it then does, it produces ethanol, which is then your wine and your beer. And then the bubbles, when it's actually making or happening, is carbon dioxide. Describe chemosynthesis. Right, this is then the process where some organisms, often bacteria, use chemicals to produce carbohydrates. Question number 8, what is the difference between a food chain and a food web? All right, so what you do is start with the food chain. Right, so what I'm going to do here is that's grass, obviously. Right, eaten by a rabbit, eaten by a fox, eaten by an eagle. All right, that's a food chain. And what a food chain does, it just has kind of one route. It has one route, one path, but that obviously isn't the big picture. A food web is where there's combination, so I'm just going to write down here, it is a combination of lots of food chains, right? That's a food web. Right, where a food chain only has one route for energy to flow. Right, so there's a food chain there. What a food web would be is then something else eats the grass, something else eats the grass, then whatever's there, something else eats it, and then something over here eats it. And what it is, it's a combination of lots and lots and lots of food chains, and that's your food web. Explain why a pyramid of biomass is more useful than a pyramid of numbers. Right, what a pyramid of biomass shows you is the biological mass in a system, and it's kind of like the amount of organic matter, right? So that kind of shows everything. It doesn't matter how big or small it is, right? It's kind of the mass of everything. And what a pyramid of numbers is where it just shows how many. Right, in pyramid of numbers, they can be all sorts of different shapes. You can have a big at the bottom, small at the bottom, you could have a bigger one there, you could have one there. Right, and the pyramid of numbers is kind of a little bit messy, where a pyramid of biomass is always the same shape. It's always big at the bottom, smaller, 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 right, and it shows the biological mass at each level. What is bioaccumulation? So, bioaccumulation is where a chemical builds up in a food chain. So, for example, mercury. Right? So what happens is something at the bottom of the food chain, like some plant, absorbs mercury. An animal eats it and it keeps the mercury. Another animal eats it. So bioaccumulation is where you've got different levels of chemical building up all the way through. Okay, this is then probably the best example, which is DDT, right? A pesticide that used to be used and then was banned, because what happened is the pesticide, it bioaccumulated, and it ended up that I think it was eagles that were at the top of the food chain. Their shells of their eggs were very weak, and so what happened is they just broke very easily. So DDT, a pesticide, was banned, and that's because it bioaccumulated and it went right the way up the food chain. Question number 12, describe the method you would use to estimate the number of daisies in a field using a quadrat. Okay, there's my field, right, there's that, right, my daisies are purple, right, obviously. Okay, so number 1, split the field into a grid. Okay, and I'm going to call that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and that I'm going to call A, B, C, D. So stage number 2 is I've split the field into a grid like that. Random choose a section. Okay, you can use a random number generator or pull pieces of paper out. So if I've then got 3D, I would then go to 3D and I would count the number of daisies in that quadrat there. All right. Number 3 is, well, I just said it, count the daisies in that section. And then number 4, calculate the total for that field. Alright, so the example of that could be, I'll just change the colour again, we'll go orange. So in that one there, let's say there's 5 daisies. Right, and what you normally do is you normally do lots and lots to try and get a mean. And then you can work out that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. So if the mean was 5, you do 20 times 5 equals 100 daisies approximately in that field. Right, keywords. A collection of different types of organisms present in an ecosystem is a community. Right, so it's a bit like the estate that you live on, right? That's a community of different people. Organisms that eat other organisms as food, so the first one on the chain is a consumer. A lack of minerals causing poor growth, deficiency. The name given to the interaction between plants, animals and their habitats is the ecosystem. The area in which organisms live is your habitat, so your bedroom is your habitat. The way in which living organisms depend on each other to survive and grow is interdependence. So different animals like rhinos always have that bird that travels around on the back because they're eating all the bugs off the back. It's like dependent on each other. A particular place or role that an organism has in an ecosystem is its niche. Extra oxygen required after anaerobic respiration break down lactic acid. So when you get that lactic acid build up, you then have an oxygen debt and you've got to breathe heavy to get rid of it. The number of plants or animals of the same type that live in the area is a population. An animal that eats other animals is a predator. An animal that's eaten by other animals is a prey. And the organism that makes its own food from photosynthesis is the producer. Right, now there's lots and lots of keywords, right? In a topic like this, one of the biology topics, it's the keywords, and you have to use the correct words. So if you're ever answering a question, right, what you have to do is you have to use terms like predator, you have to use like prey, you have to use population, community, all sorts of different things like that. You've got to just make sure that you use the keywords. So learn them all, right? And then what you do is you then got to go back over this video, make sure everything's written down. Once you find that everything's then written down, go to the blank video, test it, right, and then test yourself.